Ani, Erin, Peltier, Dijnikaz, Wikwemakong Donjaba. Where is my, right here. So this is where I'm from. This is our flag, Wikwemakong flag, and I'm very proud of this flag. My parents are Anita Peltier, who's here today. She's a former teacher and former diabetes educator. And my father is Andrew Manitowabi Ba. He is a local businessman who passed away earlier this year. I'm a wife to a wonderful husband, Blair, who's from Moose Factory, up and along the James Bay coast, and a mother to two beautiful children, Kyrie and Shea. Just want to show you a picture of my family. Whoops. Whoops, that's my grandma. Oops. What's going on here? I think I skipped. Oh, there we go. There's my husband and my kids. So I would just like to thank Tammy Asinaway. Where is she? Oh, thank you, Tammy, for asking me to speak at this wonderful conference. And thank you, Nojib Wintech, for allowing me to speak here and allowing me to work for your organization, Chimigwech. And I'd just like to thank you, all of you being here, to listen on a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. When I was asked to speak about traditional and Western medicine, there's many thoughts that came to my mind and to the surface that I never thought about in a very long time. They've been, in the most part, in a distance. What I mean by distance is that I never had a chance to reflect on this part of my life in a long time. Preparing for this keynote address has been a very reflective process, not only about my past, but also my future. In order for you to understand my values, my beliefs, and how I incorporate traditional and Western medicine into my practice, I'd like to share with you a little snapshot about myself, about my journey. Oh, there's my grandma again. There's a little path there that just reflects my journey. So I want to tell you about my early influences in my life, my influences in the traditional and Western medicine, and what it means to me being a practitioner or a healer of our people. So the first part of this snapshot of my journey is my family history. So this history or intergenerational effect started years ago. This is evident and part of with my grandmother, Agnes Wakagijik, who is pictured here. She was a residential school survivor, and she was one of the first females in Wikwemakong to ever attend teachers college. I believe Shirley Kenoshameg was the other woman who went, and as well as Rita Corbier thereafter. And I'd like to thank these wonderful ladies who paved the road for us. My grandmother intentionally, I'm going to go back. My mother went to the Indian day school, and my grandmother intentionally sent her to boarding school, a Catholic boarding school, at the age of 12 in Pembroke, Ontario. My grandmother valued Western education very much. As you can see from her educational journey, and as well as instilling these values into my mother, therefore making it intergenerational. My mother actually took me off the reserve at the age of 12 to attend school in Sudbury, and now I'm living in this city and my children are going to school in this city. So like I said, this is kind of intergenerational. But back then, my grandmother to my mother, she intentionally did that, and I think right now that this assimilation or this intergenerational thing is now subconscious, and we don't even realize that we do it today. It's a part of our everyday life. It's a part of our history. This assimilation goes back to the days of the residential school. So that's just a little bit of my family history I wanted to share. So this is a picture of me as a young girl. I grew up with older brothers who I adore and love. I think back when I was that little pesty sister who would follow them everywhere. I'd follow them to the hockey rink. I'd follow them to the baseball field. I'd follow them to the bush to play war with them. And I even followed them to work. My older brother, Mike John, he's a lot older than me. He's been working at the Wakumekong nursing home for about 36 years now. Thanks, Mike, for helping our elders. Back in the day, when I think I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was a little bit younger than in this picture. I'd follow him to work. I would go help the nurses fold the laundry. I'd help prepare the dining room for the residents to eat. And then I eventually started visiting our elders who are living in the nursing home. I distinctly remember this one elderly lady. Her name was Annie, and I used to walk by her room, and she'd be sitting there staring out the window, and she looked very lonely. When I asked about her, I asked the nurses, and they said her family didn't come around very much to visit. So at that time, I just felt really sad for her, and I felt sad and lonely, and so I made it my mission to go and visit her. So every day after school, I'd go to the nursing home and go visit Annie. We'd walk around down the halls, up and down. We'd go have tea in the common room, and we would just visit and laugh. But the funny thing was that she didn't speak a word of English, and I only knew a few words in Ojibwe, but we were still able to communicate, that nonverbal communication. And yeah, there's no barriers to us communicating. And I think that first experience with Annie was my first lesson on the value of relationships and communication. And I think that helping our elders in my community at that young age was when I knew I wanted to become a healer, a helper. That's when I first knew, but I didn't realize it at that time. After high school, I decided to study nursing. That's a helping profession. I enrolled into Laurentian University for a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And during one of my summers off, I had the opportunity to work with my uncle, Ronnie Ba, who is the coordinator of the traditional medicine program at the Wakumekong Health Center. Here's a picture of my uncle. He was doing a ceremony at my cousin's wedding. Very powerful picture. My uncle Ronnie was one of the greatest influences in my life, not only because of the way and how he interacted with people, the relationships that he built with people, and his leadership skills, but he taught me that traditional medicine and Western medicine can coexist. This was certainly evident with his relationship with Dr. Jack Bailey. I'm not sure if many of you know Dr. Jack Bailey. He was a physician here in Little Current for years. Passed away, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago, I believe. Yeah. Uncle Ronnie and Dr. Jack had a very unique relationship. They worked side by side, collaborating with each other to achieve the same goal, that is to improve the health of our people. They discussed different treatment regimens from the Western and traditional sides of medicine to make sure there was no interactions. During that summer, when I was in nursing school, I got to work alongside with him. My responsibilities included taking medication history, making sure I knew what types of medications his clients were on. Then I was able to look up potential interactions with, any of the Western and traditional medicines that they were taking. I always remember him prescribing a tea or a diabetic tea that help lower blood sugars in diabetics. He taught me about our traditional medicines, our ceremonies, and the symbolism of our culture. Reflecting back now, I wish I stayed that one extra hour with him. Just having that extra time to ask more questions, to learn more, to listen more from him, and to pay more attention. I just wish I could go back in time and get that back, but I can't. That's one regret I have. The reason why I have this regret is because that knowledge is way more valuable than something I could read in a book. He was more than a teacher. He was a pillar to my cultural knowledge and beliefs. After that summer, I became aware of the differences between the two worlds that I had lived in. The first world was my culture, my identity, and my roots, my beliefs, the ceremonies I believed in. And the second world is the world I was assimilated into, the institution of education. But don't get me wrong, like I believe and I value this education system. This is why I'm up here speaking to you today. However, being in that institution at that time drove me away from my roots. I graduated and went on to work in my home community of Wukumakong, and then I eventually moved to the James Bay Coast, the community of Kasashawan. I'll show you a couple of pictures of Kasashawan. Whoops. Here's one of the water at the sunset. Those are my favorite pictures of Cash. I think it was there in that community where I decided I needed to do more, to advocate more for our people. I went back to school to get my nurse practitioner certificate, and after coming back to the community, I was able to see the hardships that this community endured. Their determinants of health were very poor. They lacked clean water. They endured flooding every year. They lacked food security and substandard housing. That is when I decided I need to apply to medical school. And why medicine? I think at the time, I thought I needed those MD credentials behind my name to have a louder voice, which are thoughts that I've learned from years of living in an assimilated world. I just felt like, our elders are so wise and so knowledgeable beyond many of us, beyond all of us, but they don't get that credit. So that's why I thought I needed that. And I'm just going to leave that thought there. There are a number of experiences in my short medical career that have made me reflect on how traditional and Western medicine coexist in my life and my practice. I'm at a point in my life where I now realize that I could bring both into my practice. So number one, I just want to talk to you a little bit about where I work. So I have an opportunity to work alongside traditional healers here on the island and in Sudbury. But I'll give you an example of Sudbury at Chicago-McQuay Health Center. It's a urban health center that services the urban population, Aboriginal population. So when they first come to our center, I do an intake with them. I introduce myself, introduce the center and all the programs that we have, and I do my usual intake with their history and a physical exam. And what's nice about our program is that our traditional healers are like a couple of doors down. It's an amazing and it's a unique situation where I refer people to our traditional healers and then they refer back, so we have that collaboration. What I do with my patients is to make them comfortable and to let them know that I do believe in our medicines and that I encourage it. I want them to tell me if they're taking any medicine, just to make sure I don't give them anything that's going to interact. And it's just, I think it's amazing that here and in Sudbury that I have that. I don't think any other practitioners have that opportunity to work that closely with our healers, and I'm just so thankful that I get to do that. I just have one example. I had a patient who came to see me, and they disclosed they had some shoulder pain. And they told me they went to a healer, and that there was something going on with their shoulder. That's all they told me. But they wanted to come and see me first. They wanted to make sure there was nothing wrong with the joint or the tendon. So I'm like, okay, let's do an exam, and we'll do an x-ray and our ultrasound. So we did all that, and I had a follow-up appointment with them, and everything was normal. And they stopped and they paused and they looked at me. Should I go to a ceremony? Like, is there really something going on with my shoulder? I'm like, yes, go to a ceremony. Like, they're like, do you think there's energy there? I'm like, yeah, there could be energy, and go to a ceremony and do that. I really encourage it, because energy is there, right? We can't see it, but it's there, and we need to have a good balance in our life to be healthy. So they did, and I'm just giving you an example how I built that relationship with that patient in order for them to feel comfortable talking about that with me, because many times people don't. But I encourage you to talk to your practitioner about it. Another experience I'd like to share is about palliative care. Palliative care is very, very dear to me, and I'm so passionate about it. Because in palliative care, our ceremonies and also the the Western medicines amalgamate so well at that time. And a person is on their journey, the Western door, when they're near their time. Having both in their lives at that time is so important. For example, my father just recently passed away, and when he was, in his last hours, we had a number of ceremonies there that helped not only him, but me and my family as well. And we also had the Western medicine, right? Medicines to make him comfortable. And that just gave him the dignity, because the biggest thing with death and dying is dignity. And he had both. He had his traditional ceremonies, and he had the Western medicine. So that's just an experience I want to share where we could coexist. Like I said in my introduction, this is just a snapshot of my journey. There are hundreds of experiences that have shaped me, of who I am as a person and as a physician. A number of experiences have made me come to understand that both ways can coexist, and now I amalgamated them both into my everyday life. When I reflect back on my time with my uncle, I did not know what lesson I was given during that time. A friend recently gave me a piece of advice, and I'd like to share it with you. She told me that you may not always understand things that happen to you, but when it's meant for you to understand, you'll understand. And I think that's where I am in my point in my life, in my career. I understand that these experiences and teachings in my earlier years are so important and have meaning. My reflection with my relationships with that elder, Annie, my time with my uncle, the time I have with my parents. I believe these were stepping stones to my path, my healing journey, and which path I chose to walk on, and that's what it looks like. My parents have been my biggest supporters, my rock, my advocates for higher education. They always told me to go to school, to stay in school, and get as much education as possible. Thank you, Mom. They also kept me grounded and made sure I knew where I belonged, where I came from, and to continue on the traditional path. And like I said earlier, I kind of lost that path for a while. When I was in school, I kind of lost my sense of culture, but I'm getting it back. I got it back. Now that I've gotten older and realized some important life lessons, I'm now on a path where the two worlds I lived in are now one. This will not only better myself, but it'll better my family and my community. Finally, I'd like to share an analogy with you. I don't know, many of you probably seen this. Oops. Oh, there's, before that, I just want to show a picture of my dad, me and my son, Kyrie. Oops. That's my one brother, Ian, my mom, me and my husband, Blair, at medical school. And then I just want to show you that analogy of the iceberg. So just picture the top part above water being, you know, the physical medicine that we could see, the shkike, the minigun, our Western medicine, our ceremonies, and then below, just like our values, our cultural beliefs, our relationships, our family. And we just need that iceberg to come a little bit more so we could bring the two together. Chimigwech, thank you for listening to me, and I'm very honored. Miigwech.
Okay, thank you, Erin, Dr. Erin Peltier. We're very proud at Nojmontech of Dr. Erin's accomplishments here. And I know when she had started school, became a nurse, and then going off to school, she did her residency at NOSM, and now she's a full-time family physician. So with that, Nojmontech would also like to recognize your accomplishments and the communities of Manitoulin as well for your higher education as well. We're very proud of you. Yeah. And I'm going to ask Gameowen to come up, and also she's going to present to you and talk a little bit about what she's going to present to you.
Now, I'm going to talk about this feather first before I give it to our lovely Erin. This here is a whitetail eagle feather from the bald eagle. I collected it myself off a bird, and that bird came from Nirumnasing. So this is home, this feather. And I carry a different feather teaching that when we look at this feather, we think of the four components of us: our spiritual, mental, our physical, and our emotional. And what we present outwards is our mental and our physical. What we keep inside is our spiritual and our feelings. And when we think about all those aspects in life, and we always think about our mind, and we always think with our heart. And I was always told to follow your heart, because sometimes your mind will lie to you. And we got to remember the connection between that mind and our heart. And look, that's the distance of this feather. That's the teaching with this feather. You put your mind to your heart. And remember the both of them when you're moving through life. And also, if you notice, this is a white feather. It's all white. When we do ceremonies, this white feather is the healing feather. This is what our healers and our doctors and our people work with. So when I seen this feather, I thought, this is the one. This is the one for Erin. So I spoke to it, and this is our feather. And these here will help her when she speaks to keep that mind, body in motion. Now, Kueo. And also, we just love her so much. We have another gift for you.
Oh my God.
In the old days, as the settlers were arriving, we have stories of our people making cloth so fine that they never seen anything like it until they saw samples from China, silk work. Our blankets were so fine that they gave the name Queen of Chitokwe, we would call it, down the Mississippi. This came from our people. Cloth so beautiful. We made blankets. Those blankets and other finery and embroidery that went with it was meant as an honor of recognition and thanksgiving. With the arrival of settlerism, that went away, that died away. But we, as Anishinaabe people, being ever so creative, traded in cloth, cotton cloth. And that's what we're using today, and this was made by a local artisan from Wiki, if I remember correctly. And we'd like to present that to Erin again. So, Chimigo. I think it was Debbie Peltier that made that, right? Debbie Fox.
I'm speechless. I'm overwhelmed. I did not expect this at all. I'm shaking. Just thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Nojmantik. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. Kim, yes, I know. She's standing right beside me. So. Just thank you, and I'm gonna, continue my work, continue helping our people, and Chimiigwech, everyone.
Okay, so now that we have our lovely Erin and she's completed her talk, we're gonna have a quick little 5-minute, 10-minute, get your feet, go to the washroom, whatever need be, and then we're gonna start for dinner. So we have lunch for you, and we got some dinner for you. And then we also have some more laughter. We're gonna laugh off this dinner that we had. All right, so a couple minutes, 10-minute break, come back, enjoy some fine dining. Nah. And then we're gonna have the Vaj come back and give us some more belly laughs. All right? Miigwech.